couple of summers ago, my buddy Alex and I used to go on long drives around our province, following back roads at random and hunting for abandoned houses. Alex was the driver, and I was the navigator. He quickly learned how to execute a perfect three-point turn at the end of a narrow dirt forest trail. I mastered the skill of reading a map while giving directions and keeping our snacks organized. 167 Arbor Road was near the coast, about 2 hours' drive from our hometown. I remember the address clearly because it was coincidentally located on page 167 of our dough-geared copy of the Backroads map book. We used that book to plan routes, and every time we found an abandoned house, we would mark it on the map. One time we found an abandoned church, and I marked it with a little drawing of a square with a cross on the top. The first day we saw the place, it felt like a normal day. The sky was clear and bright, the sun peeking cheerily through the handful of clouds. I was in the passenger seat, pen in hand and map book on my lap. We had already seen 3 houses that afternoon that showed the telltale signs of being empty, unkempt. Maybe broken windows, no vehicles, often without power lines, etc. None of these had been far enough from their neighbors for us to feel safe stopping to explore. Instead, we would hop out of the car, snap a few pictures, and hit the road again. This one was different. The house was set far back from the road. The driveway was obscured by weeds and the lawn was overrun. There were several pale, dead apple trees in the front yard, standing in stark contrast to the evergreen forest and partially hiding the house from view. We didn't need to question if this place was abandoned. It radiated an air of neglect that small-town poverty alone couldn't inflict on a place. We were immediately excited, but we didn't abandon our routine. We drove forward slowly, staring hungrily as we passed the house. It was another minute or two still before we came across a cemetery on the opposite side of the road, and then the next house. We were thrilled. Not only did no one live close enough to this house to see us breaking in, but we could park at the graveyard, and should anyone see us, that would be our cover story. We weren't positive we'd get in major trouble if someone caught us exploring abandoned houses, but this trespassing habit was our only streak of rebellion, and we were always anxious that one day there would be consequences. We never imagined consequences like 167 Arbor Road. Walking back towards the house, a chill in the air made it feel like we were approaching a pocket of autumn in the middle of July. Apart from the weeds, most of the plants on the property looked dead. The house was white, and if you told me that wasn't painted but was actually from years of harsh weather wiping away the house's exterior, I'd have believed you. The windows were like gaping black holes. Every pane of glass was missing. Not a single broken shard remained. This place had obviously been empty for years. It had a real sinister vibe, which only fueled our excitement to look around. The front steps were missing, so we walked cautiously down the driveway along the side of the house. A musty smell hung in the air, and we began to feel like we were being watched. It was easy to dismiss the feeling. We both believed we were breaking the law, and at the same time we were egging each other on. We both wanted to see more, to make a glorious find like the journal I'd pulled from an old trunk in the first house we ever entered. The side we were walking around had a set of wooden doors which obviously led down to the basement. The bottom half of one of them was missing, and the darkness below was as full and complete as the gloom that poured out of the windows. It was as though sunlight had no place here. At the end of the driveway, we turned into the backyard. The grass here was a little longer and more yellow than the grass had been out front. The yard was smaller than I would have expected for a house of this size out in the country. There was a small shed about 13 yards away, nestled against the tree line in the corner of the property. Alex had been just a step ahead of me when we turned the corner. The thorns and nettles in the long grass didn't slow him down as much as they hindered my progress. He was wearing thick jeans and I was wearing khakis. He was nearly at the door ahead of me when he made a violent hand signal. Urgent. Silence. Danger. I froze, one foot stupidly in mid-air, staring at the back of his head as he stared at the tree line. Then I heard them. Footsteps, heavy and solid. If they were an animal, it had to be something large like a bear or a moose, but the rhythm of rustling thuds and snapping twigs sounded very much like a full-grown man was walking towards us through the undergrowth. After a few seconds, another set of footsteps could be heard a few meters away from the first, and then another from the other edge of the yard. We stared at the edge of the trees, unable to see through the thick branches, waiting in mute horror to get caught in the act of trespassing. Wild excuses flew through my mind. The footsteps were so close now. Any second now we would see the figures emerge from the trees. The footsteps stopped, and we waited for someone to reveal themselves, to confront us, to say something. In unison, we realized that they weren't coming any closer, and somehow that was far worse. Without a word, Alex turned and ran towards me. I didn't need another sign to start sprinting myself. It was 3 weeks later before we found our courage and went back to that awful place. That day wasn't the idyllic summer day of our first visit, but it wasn't bad. The sky was a uniform white, that strange pearly weather that's overcast without feeling cloudy. Our excitement mounted steadily as we drove slowly past 167 to park alongside the graveyard. The house was waiting for us, looking like a hollow skull. We decided this time to skip the backyard and the unknown presences that had watched us from the trees. The front step was still missing, but that no longer felt like an obstacle. It had been our first visit. Alex was several inches taller than me and had no trouble reaching the doorknob. The front door swung open easily, nearly knocking him off balance as it came out to meet us. Alex took the lead, hoisting himself into the house and then reaching down to help me up. The darkness and the smell were off-putting, to say the least, but we were eager to look around. In front of us was a large hallway that led towards the back of the house and what looked like the kitchen. The hallway also had stairs that led up into the second floor, and to either side of us was a room of unknown purpose. Unlike most of the abandoned houses we crept into, this one had been quite thoroughly emptied when its previous occupants left it behind, so there was no furniture to give us any clues about the prior functions of the space. A noise like marbles spilling made Alex pause as he took his first step into the hallway. He looked down at his feet and made a small ugh noise of disgust. I followed his gaze as my eyes adjusted to the gloom and realized what I had initially thought were pebbles on the ground were actually balls of shit, small and hard like deer poop. It covered every surface of the house. I don't mean that lightly. It was like a thick carpet, and pieces rattled and rolled with every step we took. We could not sneak around this property.
Be ready to leave, Sam,
Alex whispered solemnly.
There might be an animal in here. Whatever made this has spent a lot of time in here.
I nodded and watched as he made straight for the stairs. They creaked under his feet, and I felt a sense of unease watching him go up. I felt like we were unprepared for this house, like we were about to find something big. He took one step at a time, looking at his feet and shuffling the fossil shit out of his way as he went. From where I stood, watching him go, I could see some of the second floor landing. I thought I could see a bookcase that had been knocked over, shelves broken. I could see an open doorway, and past that what looked like a heavy black curtain, reaching the floor from a fixture out of my line of sight. I couldn't remember seeing any curtains through the broken windows from the outside, and my feelings of trepidation increased. Calm down, I thought. Curtains aren't scary. Looking back, I remember the sensation of being rooted to the spot. I couldn't seem to look around, only moving my eyes back and forth from Alex's feet to the curtain as it rustled in a breeze I didn't feel. I know that when he reached the top, the hairs on the back of my neck started to stand up. I know that he looked up from his feet and started to say, "What the f?" before he disappeared without another sound. He didn't just vanish. I sometimes wish that he had. No, when he looked up at the something I couldn't see, the curtain rushed forward and Alex flew. His feet left the stairs and he traveled straight up, and I leapt backwards out on the door and landed on my ass. I scrambled to my feet, my tailbone stung, but I seemed unharmed. From the slightly lower perspective of the ground outside the front door, I could see Alex's legs again, only his legs. They were so high up he had to be through the ceiling, flailing and kicking desperately. I ran past the dead trees and didn't look back until I reached the edge of the driveway. I wish I hadn't turned around right away, but I did. There was an impossibly pale face staring at me through the open door. It looked like a human, but was much too tall and shrouded entirely in darkness, like a cloak made of shadow. It was staring right at me, and for one terrible moment I thought it would chase me, but instead it disappeared into the blackness of the house. I don't know how much time passed as I tried to catch my breath. Perhaps it was 3 seconds, a minute, or an hour. I stared at the house, my heart hammering in my chest, trying to decide what to do. How could I save Alex? Could I possibly run back in there? The idea made me want to vomit. Before I could make any sense of anything, I heard shouting and thumping inside the house, and then Alex came hurtling out of the door. His momentum carried him several feet through the air before he landed on his feet with a sickening crack and crumpled into a heap. I rushed forward, not daring to look at the house. Alex was trying to stand, but his ankle was clearly broken. One arm was hanging limp at his side. His shoulder looked disgustingly out of place and blood seeping through the torn fabric. I grabbed his other arm and pulled him to his feet, supporting him as we stumble-ran to our car. We drove home in stony silence. Neither of us wanted to talk about what had happened. Alex had experienced something horrible we both had. Unfortunately, though, his physical wounds healed after a few weeks. Our friendship never quite felt the same. We both knew that when it really counted, I ran to save myself first. I still have nightmares about the face I saw through the doorway, about the unnerving gloom and all permeated stench of the place. Sometimes I dream that I am being chased through the woods by heavy footsteps whose source I can't see, or that I am waking up in front of the yard of the house. But always, without fail, the nightmares bring me back to the base of the stairs, staring up in the darkness and knowing that something is staring back. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that story. Unfortunately, this is going to be my last series on this channel. I want to go towards more short and medium stories. Sorry I couldn't get this video out yesterday. I had some things come up and it was really hard for me to try to sit down and record again because it was so loud. Please follow me on Twitter at deadfather_. And please guys, send me in your scary stories. I know I'm a small channel, but it would be really nice to have you guys send in your stories and for me to narrate them. I'm thinking about doing a collaboration with one of the bigger YouTube channels like Your Maker, Let's Read, and Uncle Unit. It'd be really great to have a collaboration under my belt and to collaborate with these amazing narrators who inspire me so greatly. My ultimate dream of all time is to do a collaboration with Corpse Husband. He is the reason why I am doing this right now. I gotta give credit to all of the narrators in this community, you know, like Boosta, Your Maker, Let's Read, Uncle Unit, Chills. You gotta give a big old shout out to Chills, and Mr. Nightmare. Mr. Nightmare is probably the best narrator out on YouTube right now. But Corpse Husband is the reason why I do this. He is such a great narrator. I love everything that he does. And if you're watching this, or if you happen to stumble upon this corpse, let's do a collaboration. I understand that you have your health issues and everything like that, but I would really love to do a collaboration with you, along with the other people that I just mentioned. Stay safe out there, guys. And remember, fear is around every corner.